All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our special day with Jerry Pinkney. We are very fortunate to have this author, illustrator, and community member with us. Thank you for remaining on mute and putting things in the chat throughout. And let's give a nice wave and friendly welcome to Mr. Jerry Pinkney. All right,
Good morning.
all yours. I'm going to present some images that he has for us as well. All right, can you see Mr. Pinkney on the slides? All right, perfect. All right, they're all yours, Jerry.
All right, so you can run through these very quickly, and then I'll speak afterwards. But I want to give you a sense of the kind of work that I do and the varied work in terms of not only the content of my stories, but also the subject matter. So you'll see a lot of different things and ideas and approaches to visual problem solving. And then later, what I'll do is I'll go into the process. We'll stop right there, and we'll come back to process a little later, Mr. Cohen. Okay, so I thought what I wanted to do is start this morning. I wrote out some things because if there's a takeaway from this morning, it's going to be 4 things. Okay, first of all, I love what I do. And hopefully you'll get the feeling of that as we go through the presentation. 2, this is very hard. I work very hard. And you'll see that. You'll get a sense of the kind of work, preparatory work that goes into what you see in terms of the books. There's a lot of work before then. Okay, now 3, the work is very rewarding, and I'll share that with you as well. And lastly, this number 4 is something my parents didn't understand when I was your age, and I loved drawing, and that is that you can make a living. In other words, when I get up in the morning and I approach the studio and I sit down at my work table, I love what I do. I have to be very prepared. I have to have all of my tools and my research in order. And then I go to work. The reward comes later. The reward comes after the research, the hard work, and the focus, of course, on the subject matter. So that is the things that I want you to take away. I'm saying that up front, but at the end of this presentation, I want you to hold on to those things. Now, growing up years, I thought I'd spend some time there. And that is, I went to Hill Elementary School in Philadelphia. And you guys are in the 5th grade. So you're, how old are we talking about? 11?
And we have some 4th graders too, so probably in the 9 to 11 range, give or take.
Okay. All right, let's hang in on that and at 9 and the 10 sort of range there, because that that was at the time when I really began to recognize that I fell far behind my fellow classmates. Now it turns out I learned as an adult that I'm dyslexic, that I have a learning difference or a learning disability, but I didn't know that when I was your age. All I knew was that I struggled in reading and spelling and composition and that kind of stuff, right? And but I didn't know why. Now, I did want to succeed in school. I did want to contribute. So what I did was I leaned on the fact that it was recognized very early that I had the ability, the talent to make drawings, and far better than most of my fellow classmates at the time. But I didn't know what to do with that. But I did know this, that when I began to draw, I felt better about myself. So I began to, and I realized that drawing helped my self-esteem, made me feel good. So in that way, I was able to try the best I could to put in perspective my challenges. But I always say this, it was interesting, as hard as the struggle was for me when I was in elementary school, as hard as that struggle was at that time, I was always a good student. And maybe I was, super good because I really wanted to be able to fit in and I wanted to be understood. So I worked very hard, and oftentimes I would accompany projects or assignments with some sort of drawing. I would make something, a cover or whatever. And I graduated with honors. I graduated as a top male student. And that's because, again, I talked about this in terms of my art, but it's about working very hard and enjoying your work. Now, as I said, there were no art classes in my elementary school. There were no artists in my family or in the neighborhood. So I didn't understand that. I did know how much I enjoyed drawing, and so I used that. Now, at the age of 13, and we had to be very industrious. I grew up in a family of, there was 6 of us children, and mom and dad, and we lived in this small house in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So there was always this sense that we needed to earn some extra money, and so I did all kinds of things. But at 13, I took a job selling newspapers. It was a newspaper stand in the Germantown section of Philadelphia. And remember I said I love drawing? Well, you couldn't find me without a drawing pad. And I would take a drawing pad and some pencils. By the way, I had plenty of pencils because my grandfather worked in a pencil factory and he would bring pencils home for us. So I would take some pencils and a pad of paper, and I would take them to work. Now, I would get my bundle of papers and I would sit them on, it was a newsstand on the shelf there in the newsstand. And then next to that, those papers, I would put my sketch pad and my pencils. And I worked very hard. Get your newspapers here, that whole business. You've seen it on TV. That was me. You see it in the movies. So I would work very hard. Now, it turns out that there were other newsstands, 2 much larger, and they sold magazines. They even sold snacks. So my stand was a small stand. It was busy at times, other times not so busy. When it wasn't busy, I would take out my pad and I would draw whatever was in front of me. There was a large department store right across from my newsstand. And I would, when they would change the window displays, I would treat them just like a still life, a rotating still life. And I would do drawings. I was drawing all the time. And then I pop back up when a bus or trolley would stop and passengers were board or unload. And I would do drawings. Now, here's the cool thing. I didn't realize this until much later, because I would draw people, and my aunt tells me, because my aunt knew my boss, Matt was my boss, and there was a thing said around that sort of that corner of newsstands, and that was, buy a paper from Jerry, and you just may get a drawing. So that was the first time I sold anything was for a nickel or a dime, and it would be drawings of people. Now, what I thought I'd do is, I'm going to see if this is going to work, because what happened was one of my customers, his name was John Liney. and he was a cartoonist of a strip called Henry at the time. As a matter of fact, the strip ran in the paper, the bulletin that I sold. And one day while I was drawing, he stopped to buy a newspaper, and he saw me drawing. And he asked if I would share the drawings with him. And of course, I said yes, and not knowing that he was an artist. So he looked at the drawings, and I can't remember what he commented, but I think he probably was very polite. And he said, "My studio is right up the street. Would you like to come up and visit?" Now, remember, there were no artists in my family, no artists in the neighborhood. So going to an artist studio for the first time was incredible. I mean, it was just, imagine going into a space, and it was a large space with windows, and he had projects tacked on around, similar to what you see in my studio, what I'm going to do with, which in like a little tour if I can. And here, in this big space, there was a drawing table in the center and a tabaret where he kept all his tools, materials. And first of all, that was kind of amazing to see how many different tools and material he had to work with. And but here's the thing. Here's the thing. This man, John Liney, got up in the morning. He went to work. He went to work. He sat down on a drawing table. And he did exactly what I'd love doing. He was drawing. He was making drawings. He was making cartoons. He was making cartoons. That was his work. I didn't know that up until then. That was his work, and that's how he provided for his family. So here's what I'm going to try to do. You're going to have to respond and tell me if this is working, because I've never done this before. The computer is on a kind of a music stand. I'm going to try to rotate the computer as if, I never even thought of that, as if you're Jerry Pinkney at 13 and you have just been invited to visit John Liney. So, and you're walking in to his studio. So I'm going to see what happens here, because I can't see it from my end. So hopefully this is working, and you'll have to let me know. So, all right. So I'm going to, this in my background, you see, this is my studio. All right. Now, how's this working?
We can see it. Do you want to maybe narrate what are some of those things in the background?
Oh, okay. All right. So the background is, there's all the way over, there is a work table, a writing table, because I write as well as illustrate. And then what I'll do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it this way. All right. That's one of my bookcases. You can see that clearly, right?
Yes.
Yes. And I have a total of maybe 3,000 books. And I'm going to walk you through. This is just some of my work that's hanging on the wall. And I hang some of my work, and I hang others as well. So I'm going to walk you through. I collect things, as you can see. There's a rocking horse there. Let me see if I'm going to point this down a little bit more. And you see I have 2 working desks. This one here is where I do my painting. The other desk over there, the other work table, is where I do my drawing. And that on the top there's a light box, and that's another whole thing. So here we are. We're going to walk through the studio, and you'll see I love plants, as you'll see. I love plants, and I've also, a lot of these things, by the way, I oftentimes do drawings of. I love music. So you'll see my music collection, sort of kind of not in order, and I'll just walk you through the studio. This is an image. I think you can see it. Let's see it. This is an image I did for the United States Postal Service, and this was on the celebration of Latin America. This is a Puerto Rican Day Parade, and you'll see. Then I talked about my writing desk. You'll see the writing desk there, and that's my exercising bike. It's my exercising bike. And remember, I talked about research, and there you see this is a project now, and I believe you can see it. Can you, Josh, Mr. Cohen, can you see like a bunch of books? And
yeah, we can see the big stacks on your desk.
That's one project. Now, I'm working on two projects, and that was supposed to be there. That room is going to be when I need help with my technology.
What's the topic of all those books?
Well, these shelves here are all nature. That's all nature. In there, in the other room, that far bookcase, what you're going to see is shelves of fine art or art that you might see in a museum. And then you'll see here, this group I'm doing my memoir. And it's around the age of 10 to 13, really. And these are all the stacks of research. So this has a lot to do with the 50s, 40s and 50s, and also Black life and culture. Okay, and then I'm going to walk you through here. And this is another project, and this is one about actually it's going to be about working with the poet Nikki Grimes, and we're going to work together and collaborate on a project that deals with my walks in the woods around this area. So it's going to be centered in the McAndrews Estate and Audubon. And you'll see, I'll talk about independent work. These are, by the way, those shelves in there, these are all where I store my artwork. And those are all art I've illustrated. My first book was published in 1964. My first professional jobs, I guess, in 1960. And here, what you'll see, this is a portrait. This is a portrait. I think you can see that. That's a pastel. Now, most of my work is pencil and watercolor on paper, but these are pastels. So I explore and I experiment with different mediums, and you'll see these are a series of portraits. I'll just hold them up since it's awkward. That's my daughter, Troy. And I hope you can see these okay.
Yeah, we can see it very clearly.
So this is new for me, by the way, pastel. And that's a self-portrait. So, all right. So you had some visit, sort of a mini visit to Jerry Pinkney's studio, like when I was with John Liney. And there's my these are all cabinets where I store my artwork. And there's another bookcase. This bookcase here. This is all American history and American culture. So here, look, to give you an example. This is on porches. If I'm drawing a house, I want to know what a porch might look like in the South or in the Midwest. I can have it here. Now I have, of course, Google. I can Google everything, but I like the idea of holding a book in my hand. All right, we're going to go back to my drawing board. Did that work? Tell me.
Yeah, that worked very well. I'm looking at some of the reactions and thumbs up.
Oh,
One
that's
one
beautiful.
question, Jerry. Maybe you want to share a little, like the self-portrait. How do you
Oh,
do that?
um,
Like, the process, maybe, I know they've done some things in arts with mirrors or other, maybe talk about your process to creating things like that.
all right, good. Now, since we have on the screen, we have some thumbnail sketches, let's run through those quickly. So if we can just go, these are on your left would be a thumbnail sketch, and I do tons of these. And it's a thumbnail sketch is exactly what it is. Thumbnail meaning small, and it's a quick and direct way to get a sense of what you want to do. So, and the beauty of it is that you do them quickly and fast and very fast, and they're small. So you get a sort of a sense of what you're looking for is what passages need to be interpreted or illustrated. So you want to get, but you want to also explore how many possibilities are there? How many different ways can I see something? Can I see it from looking up? Maybe you're looking down. Maybe the people are facing me. Maybe their backs. And on the other side, of course, what you see is that is a working drawing. Now, I want to talk about these first because when I do the portraits, there are no working drawings. But here, since I'm working for it's a project that I was given to illustrate, and it's my job to interpret the text. But there's a size. We have to consider size. Hey, guys, math is important. I didn't think so when I was in school. I didn't like math. Math is important. Everything I do has to be the right scale. So did I know that then? No, I didn't, but I know it now for sure. So, but you see, I'm trying to think, that bottom on the left-hand corner, the small drawing, you can see the next step would be to develop. Once I decide that's what I want to illustrate, I then began to do a working drawing. The working drawing is the size, usually the same size as it's going to be reproduced and what you have in your hands, right? So, and these are done with mainly, used to be in marker, but it used to be in pencil. Now it's marker on like a vellum, and then I sort of transfer the vellum. Next slide, please. Yes, that is what the final art looks like. And the final art is it's pencil and watercolor on a watercolor paper. All right, next slide. Let's see what I have in the next slide. Again, what you see is on the left there, you see a working drawing, and then on the right you see the finished art. Now, Mr. Call, you asked about the process in terms of the portraits, and that's completely different. And I think one of the beauties of what I do and what artists do, what musicians do, is that they continually explore possibilities. And in a sense, you guys growing up, what I want you to do in terms of your own sort of shaping of what you think you might want to be, think about it in terms of possibilities. Think about your gifts, your strong points, but also think about maybe how many different ways can I look at, like I would say, how many different ways I could look at Jerry Pinkney? How many different ways can Jerry Pinkney think about something? And I want you to kind of apply that to no matter what you do, because in a sense, everything you do in school, out school, all develops who you're going to be, who you're going to become. So consider everything valuable. Every experience should fit into shaping who you are going to become. So, okay. So again, with the portraits, I sit down with a mirror. No, we'll hold it. Before I do that, I tend to take a photograph. Now, the photograph doesn't have to be terrific. It just has to be something I can refer to. I take a photograph, and then I start proportions, that kind of thing, kind of working towards a likeness. And then what I'll do is I'll put that aside, and I work with a mirror. I have a mirror. I used to have until I knocked it over and I broke it, but I had a mirror, a standing mirror. I got to go to Bath and Beyond and get another one. And I just look in the mirror. Now, if in fact there are other, like my wife or my daughter, they come into my studio and they sit for me. In other words, there's my working drawing bench, and they sit next to it, and I continue to work on that. So there's as far as process, I tend to need to do things differently, I'm not sure I said that correctly because I've been doing this for 60 years, but I change up things a little bit. So the work that I have to do for my book work, that is very thought out and planned. When I'm doing my own, what I call independent work, and like the portraits, that is a lot looser. It's almost in a sense liberating. But I don't have to worry about math when I'm doing my independent work. I do when I'm doing my book work. So that's a little bit about process. I also wanted to talk about one of the things that if oftentimes the last part of any presentation is what kind of wisdom I can impart to you young budding artists. And that is, if the wisdom is this, a sketchbook. The sketchbook. It's what sort of got me interested in drawing. Remember I talked to you about the newsstand and taking that drawing pad with me and the sketching. And it was very rewarding. And again, it's also a way of connecting. It's an exercise. That's what it is. It's an exercise. How many of you guys do sports? Right? You have to, yeah, you do. Right. So you have to exercise, right? You have to kind of like warm up and that whole thing. Yeah. So that's what that's in a sense what a sketchbook does for me. And why don't we go to there's another group of slides, Mr. Cohen, that it's the sketchbook. Ah, there you go. And you guys will love these. These are drawings of animals that live in this same area. Well, you guys are probably, how many of you have seen fox? It's pretty cool. Fox, yeah. And you could, and of course the raccoons. How could you miss them raccoons? They tend to like to go in garbage barrels, right? Let's take a look at some other things that I've done in my sketchbook. All right, then of course deer. I used to actually chase deer away because they're always eating my shrubs, but now I don't. The other thing that I think that's beautiful about living out here in this part of the world is not only what you see, but also what you can hear at night. And that's a tree frog on the left there. And this is my sketchbook. And I mean, I use this, and I did these drawings not knowing that it was going to turn into a project. It was just something that I love doing. Now we're going to actually, the book that I'm doing with the poet Nikki Grimes is going to, it's going to be this collaboration about these animals that you see on the screen there. Do we have any more, or is that the last? Of course, is the hoot owl, and I can't tell you how many nights I've gone to sleep listening to the hoot owl, and it's a beautiful sound. Now, one of the things I talked about earlier in those sort of takeaway, you guys remember those 4 things you want to take away from this presentation? Well, one of the things was that it's incredibly rewarding, and so we may end up talking about that. I think maybe in some of the questions might be about how rewarding and the experiences that are wrapped around my work. But one thing, and I want to bring this up because I think most of you know my work fairly well. Yes? Okay. Okay. All right. Do you know this book? Oh, the teacher knows this book. Well, he got you. But this is a pop-up book. And I did this for National Geographic. I just show you another one because I love this book. Okay, I got to do it this way. So can you imagine the kind of excitement there is in taking on a project where you know very little about, and most of us don't know about the deep down in the sea, in the ocean, and having to study that. Now, I want to go back to something that was it's important to me, and I hope it registers with you. When I was your age, I had great teachers. There was no question about that. But I didn't have someone to visit my classroom and say, one of the key things about learning is curiosity. I didn't know that. And as an adult, I mean, what are the things that I think about? What are the things that I want to know about? You know what I want to know about? What I don't know about. That's what I want to know about, is what I don't know. And I think that's what I want you. And don't be afraid of what you don't know, because that's the exciting part. That's the growth you want. Now, why don't we answer some questions? Because I don't want to leave you guys without.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Jerry, if you want, I could start with some of the chat ones.
Yeah.
Some of them, just some facts like where do you live, maybe where your studio is, if you want to share that.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm a neighbor. I'm here in Croton on the Hudson, New York. Croton's a small town. I probably end up running you guys in the supermarket one day. So that's where I live, and that's my studio is in my home. By the way, it's a brand new studio. I sort of created this for myself and as a workspace. So yeah, so it's Croton on the Hudson, and I've been here since 1970. 1970. Yeah.
Some people I saw some holding up art in the screen. They'd love to know if they could share some with you at another time.
Oh, I'd love that.
All right, so maybe our teachers can email you some pictures of the art. Great.
Sure. Right, exactly.
Some children's book you wrote, idea, and then let's say children's book you wrote. I'm trying to draw the themes here. What was your first drawing? How many books you've illustrated? Maybe a favorite illustration, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Okay, all right. So my first book was published. Remember I talked to you about math? Okay. My first book was published in 1964. It was called The Adventures of Spider by Joyce Arkhurst. And it was a chapter book. So that was my first book. I've really kind of lost count. I say I've illustrated over 100 books. Now, remember this. This is important, that books are only a part of what I do. I've done advertising, I've done institutional work, meaning for magazines, and I've done all kinds of things. And I also do works for, let me bring you down because I think this is important. It's to give you a sense. I work for National Geographic. You guys know National Geographic magazine? I've done about 4 projects for them. I've done, what you should know about. I've created, designed, and illustrated 11 stamps for the U.S. Postal Service. Did you know that? Yeah, 11 stamps for the U.S. Postal Service. But the project, here's the thing. I'm working really, really hard, and I get a call. And I pick up the phone, and it said, yes, is Jerry there? And I said, yes, I'm Jerry. I said, this is a call from the White House. So I said, what? And they said, Mrs. Laura Bush, First Lady, would like to work with you on a project. And we were wondering if I could come to visit within the next 3 or 4 days. And I said, of course, of course. So here's the thing. I get off the phone. I'm really excited about this, right? I go upstairs and I say to my wife, Gloria, I just got a call from the White House. She said, which White House? and anyway, I went to visit. I've worked on actually 2 projects for the White House, and then some projects for the National Book Festival, all working with the First Lady, Laura Bush. And actually, we correspond back and forth with one another. So did I know that? Did I know that at 9 or 10 or 12? No. So my thing is this. You don't know. Be prepared. Because you don't want to get a call from the White House and they say, give me a name, Mr. Cohen, anybody's name. Give me a name of one of the students.
I'll give you Melina.
Melina. This is the White House calling. We got this project we really would like you to work on. And Melina says, I'm not prepared. You don't want that, right? What you want to say is, tell me when you want me to come down to visit. That's what you want. And that's what school was about. It's being prepared because you don't know where the opportunities might arise. That's it. Yeah.
All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
A couple of questions that were repetitive. They a lot of them want to know, do you have a favorite illustration or book that you've worked on?
Let's see if I can find. I have you know what? It's a very interesting thing because what happens is I tend to choose, in other words, especially at this point, but for the last 20 or 30 years now, a publisher, the way it works is the publisher will say, Jerry, this is a project we'd like to know whether you're interested in, and we think you're appropriate for this. We think you will work well. So tell me, are you interested? So I choose projects that I am interested in. So it's, so I look at the project and I say, can I add something to this project? And then if I say, to myself, yes, it's something where I really want to do, I would be interested in knowing it, then I would go ahead and do the project. So all of the projects, most of the projects, I have selected to work on. Now, here's one, and sometimes there are stories connected to a project, and it's always the last one, right? It's always the last. Yeah. This was done in 98. No, it was probably 88. And it's the John Henry. Now, John Henry is a folktale, but it was a story that I remembered from my growing up years. This was John Henry was very important. How many of you guys have superheroes? Right? Well, this is my superhero, John Henry. So, and a lot of these illustrations are my favorites. But what you want to do is, so there's a lot of really favorite illustrations. The ones that we I shared in the beginning are some that I really are fond of. But I mean, each of my illustrations, each of the project has a story that makes it important.
Mrs. Maldonado has a question. You can unmute for this one, Miss Maldonado.
Hi, Mr. Pinkney. It's nice to meet you. Our class read earlier this year a book called Fish in a Tree about a girl with dyslexia.
Yes.
And her character drew a lot. And we were wondering, when you do your illustrations, do you think about children with disabilities or differences? And because your illustrations are so detailed and they so match the words and the stories. So we were wondering, do you think about that when you make your illustrations?
It's interesting because dyslexia or a learning difference or learning disability plays a role in almost everything I do. Now, you mentioned detail. When I was a kid growing up, I wanted to get lost in something. So I didn't want to think about the fact that I was struggling in some classes. So now, can you draw a direct line? I'm not quite sure. But when I'm drawing, and especially the detail, I'm lost in another space, and I'm very comfortable in that space. So I think what happens is, for my readers, you benefit in a sense from this thing that I need in my life. And now I've chosen children's literature. First of all, I care about our children very much, care about you guys. And I care about what you see and read and all that kind of stuff. So there's always that. I'm always paying attention to the audience, and when I base my decisions on what I think is best for my readers. So yes, and I've also been sort of trying to be outspoken about my challenges, because in a sense, we all have some challenge, right? Mm-hmm. And so to overcome. Now, I want to stay on that just a little bit because we're getting what time? The last thing, I guess.
We can go 5 more minutes, Jerry.
Oh, we got 5 more minutes. Okay, here's the thing. All of my young life and most of my adult life, I've run away from the written word. Mm. I'm now writing. And so, as you know, of course, you're familiar with the books I've adapted. Now, the Little Mermaid, which is just out, last year, is the first book, that original, story. In terms of the text is all new. I've adapted stories before, but this is original text inspired by the Little Mermaid, Hans Christian Andersen. I am now writing my memoir, which it's going to be like a cross between a hybrid of graphic novel and prose. And I've been working on it, by the way, for 8 years, just a short period of time. But I'm writing, and I guess what, this is a powerful thing. A person who stayed away and shied away and kept a distance between writing is now writing. And what is magical about it is I see the growth. I see the growth. I see me growing as a writer. And it's been said that I'm a fairly decent writer. But the point is, when you engage in something new, when you engage in something that you haven't done before, when you engage in something that you've not seen before, it's exciting. It's rewarding, and that's what I want you to always keep in mind. That within that space where it's hard work and it's also new, I don't know how I'm going to do this. That's the part. This is the place where you grow. That's the place where you want to be. You want to be challenged. So anyway, that's true of everything. I mean, I always kind of compare it to sometimes with sports. The more you practice, the more you run, the better runner you become, right? And that's true really of almost anything. Mm-hmm. You want to be a better teacher, a better principal, right? What do? You work hard. That's it.
Well, thank you very much, Jerry. We appreciate not only, what you've shared about your work, but how a lot of this applies to anything or any dream that someone might have. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. You guys, you have a great day. And that's got to be a hard time for you guys, right? Right now, but you've got great teachers in a great school. So I'm not going to ask you this, but you can think on this. What were the 4 takeaways? All right. Okay, guys, take care. Good to see you.